Welcome to Let's Take a Walk with Charlie Feld, brought to you by the Feld Group Institute. Charlie is joined by Kenny Feld, Chief Transformation Officer and the earliest member of the Feld Group. Kenny is a Feld Group Institute affiliate who, in 2024, took a role as the Chief Transformation Officer with Associated Materials, a North American building products manufacturer and distributor. Charlie and Kenny get into the complexities of business operations and the strategies needed to scale successfully. Drawing from real-world experiences, including insights from our favorite Herman Lay and the founder model, they explore how understanding a business's core why can lead to better decision-making. Now here's Charlie.
Hey Kenny, it's great to see you. I know you're working at up in Cleveland now, and I don't get to see you as much as I did before. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and it kind of came up in the video that you did, and most of the people in the community have seen the video. But we're in an era now where there's so much complexity, and the complexity is dynamic in that tomorrow we could have a whole different set of supply chain issues than we have today and a whole different set of customer issues. And the notion around AI as the brain and the sensors at the edge as the extremities. But most people have really built a complex nervous system over the years, one idea at a time, one project at a time, which you covered pretty well in the video. Uh, but, in order to unwind it, I know that we have a way of thinking about how do you take all this complexity and get to the essence of simplification. And I thought it'd be a great conversation to have because now you're in a line role as a transformation officer at Applied Material, and you're in the fight. And are you able to use some of the framework to think about complexity to simplicity back to complexity?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, I've learned a ton of things from you, but one of the things that really hits home all the time and sort of grounds a lot of the things that I do as I spin through different situations is your experience with Herman Lay and the founder model. So, with all this complexity, getting back to the essence of the business and getting back to essentially trying to architect that nervous system that you just described, but architect it. That's the important part. Nervous systems can form just kind of haphazardly as they do, but being able to architect it and being able to architect it back to the essence of the business as the founder had it. So, when any business starts, it starts with a founder, and that founder can generally run that business out of one computer, their brain, for a while until the business gets bigger. Then success becomes the challenge because as you get bigger and as scale gets introduced and as you go to more geographies and customer segments, et cetera, you have to organize. So with scale comes the need to organize, to sort of divide leadership up, to divide things up into pieces,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. You have to do that to deal with scale because a founder at some point can't manage everything that happens with the business. But what happens is as you go to those org structures, you create processes and systems around the way that you're organized. And that starts to calcify. And then what happens is typically over the decades, companies reorganize again into a different way. Sometimes they reorganize in order to deal with the complexity, but it causes more complexity on top of that. So being able to step back and look at what the business actually does, be able to architect how you want it to run, regardless of how you're organized. You are going to have to organize some way, but an architecture, regardless of how you're organized, that fits more with the way the founder instinctually ran it when it was small enough to be able to run it is always a great grounding point, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Have you found it in the company you're with now in terms of the essence of what they do uh, to be able to kind of cut through multiple divisions, multiple geographies, different P&Ls, and kind of have you used it in the role you're in today?
Yeah, so it's interesting because in most companies, what we're talking about manifests itself as you build lots of different functions, regions, customer segments, however you're organized, and each one of those things builds processes. And then in order for the company to work, you've got to lash those processes together. And that's where some of the complexity comes. What I'm finding where I am now is same theme, but the opposite view of that. So we happen to be running a very vertically integrated business. It's just the way it's always been, where we effectively have a distribution business that is part and parcel. It runs together with a manufacturing business. What we're finding here is just the opposite, which is when the systems and the processes and the nervous system, to your point, forms around that business model, we're finding a ton of value unlock in being able to actually unwind some of those pieces from themselves. For instance, our manufacturing business sells a lot through our distribution business, but what is atrophied over the years is our ability to sell to other distributors because we've got these things locked so much together. Flip it around, our distributor has largely sold what we manufacture, which is great, and it's been a very successful distribution business. But the customers of the distribution business sometimes want other things in their job bundles that we could get from other manufacturers, not our own manufacturer. So being able to pull them apart in a way where the distributor can unlock new category management and new processes outside of our manufacturing business, and our manufacturing business can unlock distributor partners outside of our own distributor. So it's actually the opposite of what we see in a lot of places, but
Mhm.
the principle is the same, which is you have to step back and look at where it makes sense for things to be common and where it makes sense for things to be unique, either for the business unit that you're looking at or the function or the geography or the customer segment. So this is really interesting because it's the other way around, but it's the same approach, because even as we pull these things apart operationally, we still, IT is going to be shared, finance is going to be shared, HR is going to be shared. There's some procurement aspects that are shared. So we're effectively doing the same thing to architect where it makes the most sense. And again, one of the great things about the founder model is founders are always driven by the customer. So they run their business,
Right.
because they're very close to the customer, and that's the only way you can grow. Sometimes as companies grow, they sort of lose that as the center point, and they start to fight against how the company's organized in order to do it. But always tying it back to where can you deliver the most value to the customer, and think about it like the founder would think about it, is very sort of clarifying to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that that's where the capability architecture comes in because, we've been in places where the way the business strategy works fights with leverage. So, for example, when we were at Westinghouse, they had a nuclear business, they had a furniture business, they had a media business, yet they were trying to put in an SAP that would harmonize all of that, but they're such unique businesses. So each business had a founder,
Yep.
right? and they were different. And it was a holding company, but that's not the way you think about getting leverage. Why couldn't we procure things common? Well, you could, but maybe you shouldn't. Same thing was true with Coke. It was a franchise business. There were 86 Cokes in the US, and they were trying to implement one Coke, right? And it had reason for it because Walmart didn't want 86 bills, right? So you got to look for, well, the billing system might be common, but manufacturing and distribution would be unique. So you can't just unthinkingly go into a business with an answer. It all starts out with who is the founder? What is the business model that people are trying to get to? And I know you've worked in a number of industries like energy and different logistics and so forth. And FedEx was one of them, and they had a business model that lasted for a while, and now they've had to rethink the business model, right?
Yep.
So there are no answers; they're just questions that begin to shape. So the founder model, the capability model, are really all tied to the business model.
Yep.
And I think that have you gone into any industries over your career? I know you spent a lot of time on the business side, probably half your career on the business side, half your career on the IT side, and a portion of your career as an entrepreneur, right? Owning a business. Has the model held up in all of those?
Yeah. I mean, it has the both the idea of going back to founder. What we're talking about is using the founder model or the founder mental model as another word for it is the essence of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the essence of the business is tied to the customer. Who are you serving to do what? And another good example we talked about, well, even FedEx, right? So I'm sure you've talked about that a ton, but when Fred Smith started it, it was packages overnight, letters overnight tied to the customer and being able to leverage a network. As FedEx grew, it grew truckloads and ground and other offerings that grew. And FedEx figured that out a while back to be able to say, we got to bring these things together at the customer face and be able to operate the way Fred started the business, which is from a customer's perspective. Now they have more options, but that doesn't mean they need more FedExes to deal with from a customer perspective. So they did that a long time ago, right? That was a while ago to bring it together from a customer face. Now they're on the journey to bring that back together from an operations perspective, which is trickier, right? Because it's not just overnight envelopes anymore. It's parcels and less than truckload and lots of different things. So that whole cycle at FedEx, again, tied to the customer, going back to the basic principles that Fred started the company from nothing to the $100 billion business it is today.
Yeah, I think when you look at the origin of it, um, you know, as they bought companies in different countries, packages really didn't move out of a country. If they did business in the UK or they did business in France, when the internet came out, things started moving across the globe. And now, so much of it is package delivery to a residence, right? So, the business strategy shifts, the capability shifts, but the principles are still the same. You got customers, you got products, and you've got to be able to think through. And that's why in the blind spot, we refer to that as the what. What is it that you do, right? And you can cut through all the noise and all the pressure of multiple divisions, business units, geographies, products by saying, what do we do? And I think that, at FedEx, they pick it up and ship it and deliver it,
Yep.
right? What's the essence of what they do? So
Yeah. Another good example is we work together at Vistra,
Mhm,
Vistra Energy. In the end, the essence of what they do is deliver power to our homes, right?
mhm,
To people's homes, offices, businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Within that business, they had at least three different businesses. One is what we would think of as the power company, which is billing and and the kind of the last mile into our homes and the sort of consumption part, which they call retail. That's the retail part of energy. At the same time, they also generated power. So Vistra owned a bunch of plants, different kinds of plants, coal powered, natural gas, nuclear, et cetera. So they had power generation. And then they also had a business in between, which is trading, which could trade, which could tee up the power that Vistra generates, but also could buy power from other power generators in order to be able to, bring the optimally priced power to our homes, essentially through the retail channel. And so in the end, it's simple, but you could also argue you have three very different businesses
mhm,
in that. Power generation is heavy, assets and different a different financial profile and different competitors than the retail business that has people that's all they do is they're just the billing on
mhm,
top of it. They don't do any of the trading, they don't do any of the power generation. And then you've got this trading business that in some ways is, not tied necessarily to any power generator or any retail business. So the question is, how do you run those businesses optimally, because they are three different businesses, but still keep sight of, hey, what we're here to do is deliver power to Charlie and Kenny in their homes.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so that's where you get into, let's not make them all separate, but let's not all munge them together, and let's figure out the best of both worlds and figure out where there's leverage and where there needs to be uniqueness in the decision making and the investments and how you run each one of those businesses, all with the same purpose of delivering electricity to people and companies.
Mhm. Yeah, it really changed the playing field when it was deregulated and you could have separate people, in other words, in the same geography before the 90s. It was, boy, you bought it here and it was kind of one thing. So, the flexibility of decoupling some of those things and letting them run separate, it became the powerful idea. Same
Yep.
thing happened in the rail business. So as companies, countries, industries begin to change, you've got to be careful that you don't over commonize, you don't
Yep.
over centralize, you don't look for just this here, but now you're looking for agility, like you are at Applied, the ability to have different suppliers in your distribution network, making it easier on your customers. Then
Yep.
that wasn't the way it was, thought. So business strategy, business leverage is not always about how much one thing I could make it or how much, how loosely coupled it needs to be, but it's got to be a thoughtful process, which is the essence of it all. So, but
And you said a key word there that is, it's a tricky one, but it's a good one, which is the capability word. I,
mhm,
I find that to be the high ground on all this, because what you find is, or what I've seen over the years, is the easiest lever for people to pull is org structures, right? If the business isn't working, people tend to organize, reorganize, and it's a good intent. It's trying to line up people, incentives, mindsets against, either
mhm,
let's do it by region, or let's do it by customer segment, or let's do it by function. But capability rises above those things when you think about what you need the ability to do. What are you trying to get done? It
mhm,
it makes it a lot clearer than where do I want to send this group of people? You know, I want to put this group of people against this and this group of people against that. It sort of skips over the essence. And again, back to the founder, when you're running a small business, you don't think about how you're going to organize your people. You think about what you're trying to get done in order to deliver to the customer. So in a way, that's splitting capability. They're related, but thinking capability first and org structure second.
Yep.
Another sort of nice part of that founder model mentality.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's in a world that's crazy and feels so dynamic that you don't know anything you build, anything you do could be wrong a year later. If you go back to first principles and you look through and see what that is, then you could begin to design a business architecture that is built to last, right? As opposed to, well, let's try this, let's try that, let's centralize, let's decentralize. Those are not good words.
Yeah.
The what do I do? What do I need the capability to do? And frankly, the smaller Lego blocks I could build, I could assemble them in different ways as the world changes. So
Yep.
this is a great conversation and fun talking to you.
Thanks for doing this. It's fun.
Yeah. Yep.